Right now, in your own home, you could already be breaking the law just by being prepared, not because stockpiling is illegal, but because the rules can change overnight. While you've been responsibly buying supplies for the next big emergency, the government has been quietly dusting off old laws and passing new ones that could make your stockpile illegal. Seriously? Most people have no clue this is even happening. That 2-year food supply you so carefully built? Under certain emergency orders, it could be legally defined as hoarding. That extra fuel for your generator? You could be looking at some hefty fines. Now, these aren't just wild conspiracy theories. We're talking about court records and local citations. There's a case from Colorado where a man was warned for collecting rainwater in 4 55-gallon barrels in his own backyard. The state law there caps it at 2. In Florida, a family famously had to fight City Hall just to keep the vegetable garden they'd had in their front yard for years. And fire codes in many places, like California, can limit how much gasoline you can legally keep in your garage. A lot of these aren't brand new laws, but a patchwork of regulations that are shifting how we're allowed to prepare. It's not happening through some big public debate, but through complicated local ordinances and dusty emergency acts that most folks never hear about until they get a citation in the mail. The scary part is, right now, in your own home, you might be breaking a law you didn't even know existed. In this video, we're going to expose the rules you haven't been told about. We'll break down exactly what's being restricted, what the laws actually say, and most importantly, what you can do to legally protect your family's preps. This isn't about scaring you. It's about giving you knowledge. Because knowledge is your first and best line of defense. Stick with me, because what you don't know absolutely can hurt you. And hey, if you want to stay ahead of these kinds of changes, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss any exciting future videos. This is the part most people completely misunderstand. Before we get into specific items, we need to clear something up that's been intentionally blurred. The difference between something being illegal and something being regulated. The story they want you to believe is that simply stockpiling is becoming a crime. That's a massive oversimplification, and it's designed to confuse people and discourage self-reliance. The truth is a little more complicated, and honestly, a lot more dangerous if you don't get it. For the most part, the simple act of storing food, water, or fuel isn't against the law. But what's happening is a web of laws is being spun that creates a legal tripwire. Your perfectly legal stockpile can become illegal the second an emergency is declared. What was smart and responsible on Tuesday can be relabeled as hoarding on Wednesday. This happens on a few different levels. First, you've got federal emergency powers. Things like the Defense Production Act and the Stafford Act give the federal government huge authority during a national emergency. They can allocate materials, which is just a sanitized way of saying they can take resources and redirect them wherever they see fit. The Defense Production Act, or DPA, specifically prohibits hoarding scarce materials needed for national defense, and that definition has been stretched over the years to include all sorts of emergencies. Now, historically, this was aimed at big companies, but the language is broad. It lets the president take control of the civilian economy to make sure materials deemed scarce and critical go where they're needed for defense. And you better believe, in a major crisis, food, fuel, and medical supplies will be on that list. The second level is your state's emergency powers. Governors in places like New York and California have incredible authority to issue orders during a disaster. They can change or just plain suspend existing laws to protect life and property. For instance, New York law lets a local executive stop the sale or transport of firearms and flammable materials during a local emergency. In California, the governor can literally commandeer private property, like hotels if it's deemed necessary. The third, and maybe the trickiest level, is all the local rules and codes. This is where most people get tripped up, usually under the banner of public safety. We're talking fire codes that limit fuel storage, city codes that tell you can't have a vegetable garden in your front yard, and water laws that restrict rainwater collection. These rules are a legal minefield because they're different, not just state to state, but county to county. A family in a rural area might have total freedom, while another family one county over could get fined for doing the exact same thing. So when we say stockpiling is becoming illegal, what we mean is that the legal groundwork is already there. It allows the government, at any level, to declare your personal supply of food or fuel excessive, unsafe, or subject to seizure the minute an emergency hits. Our goal here is to give you the map to navigate this minefield. We're going to pick these laws apart, so you can see the tripwires before you step on them. Let's start with the one thing modern society absolutely cannot live without: fuel. And then there's the one topic that always gets political. Every prepper knows it. When the power goes out, fuel is king. It runs your generator, it gets you out of town, and it powers your tools. And that is exactly why it's one of the most regulated things you can keep at your house. The idea that you can just store as much gas as you want is a dangerous myth. The restrictions don't come from some new law called the fuel stockpiling ban. It's way more subtle than that. They come from fire codes, specifically the National Fire Protection Association Code, or NFPA 30. And this code isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's been adopted as law in most states, including Alabama, California, Florida, and Texas. Here's what the law actually says, and the details matter. For most homes, you're legally limited to storing 25 gallons of flammable liquids, but it gets even stricter. Many local codes say you can only keep up to 10 of those gallons inside an attached garage. And keeping it in a basement or living space? Forget about it, that's almost always banned. Let's think about what that means. A standard generator can burn through a gallon or two of gas every hour. So your entire legal 25-gallon stockpile could be gone in as little as 12 to 25 hours. That's one day. Your plan for a week-long outage just went up in smoke. In some places, it's even worse. In dense cities in California and New York, the limit can be as low as 5 gallons. 5 gallons might get you a few hours of generator power. That's not a supply, it's a countdown. And the penalties aren't a joke. It can start with a fine, but it can get worse. If there's a fire, your homeowner's insurance could refuse to pay your claim if they find out you were storing more fuel than the code allows. You could even be held liable for damage to your neighbor's property. And during a real emergency, when everyone's on edge, that unsafe fuel becomes the perfect excuse for authorities to come onto your property. So what's the solution? How do you stay ready without being a lawbreaker? You have to start thinking like a lawyer. First, diversify your fuel. The NFPA code treats different fuels differently. While gasoline is super restricted, the same codes often let you store 60 to 100 gallons of diesel. Diesel generators are a great option. More expensive, sure, but they're more fuel efficient and the fuel store is much better long term. Second, embrace propane. Propane is covered by totally different codes. With a proper professional installation, you can legally have a huge 500 or 1,000 gallon propane tank on your property. That can run a whole house generator for weeks, maybe even months, and it's all perfectly legal. It's a big investment, but it's the single best way to legally lock down a long-term fuel source. You can also legally store a bunch of smaller propane tanks, like for your grill, because they fall under different rules. Third, get the right containers. The law is very clear that all fuel has to be in approved labeled containers. For gas, that means those red DOT-approved plastic cans. Using old milk jugs is just asking for a violation. Fourth, know your local code inside and out. Don't just trust what you read online. Call your local fire marshal. Ask them straight up, what are the residential storage limits for gasoline and diesel in this county? Ask it as a safety question. They'll probably be happy to give you the exact rules. This does two things. You get the real information, and you establish yourself as a responsible citizen, not a problem waiting to happen. By moving beyond just gasoline to diesel and propane, and by knowing the letter of your local law, you can build a solid and legally defensible energy plan. You're not breaking the law, you're using its own complexity to your advantage. But fuel isn't the most shocking one. Water is. Of all the restrictions we could talk about, the idea of regulating rainwater seems the most ridiculous. Water falls from the sky, onto your roof, and yet, in some parts of the country, collecting it can get you into legal trouble. Now, let's be clear. There's no federal law banning rainwater harvesting. In fact, states like Texas and Virginia actually encourage it. The problem is a messy patchwork of state water rights laws, especially out west. This all comes down to a legal idea called prior appropriation. It's the rule in most western states, and it basically says that the right to use water belongs to whoever first put it to beneficial use. Farmers and entire cities downstream have legal rights to the water that runs off your property and feeds the rivers. So, the argument goes, if you capture a bunch of rain, you're stealing water that legally belongs to someone else downstream. And this isn't just some dusty legal theory. Several states have made it law. Colorado is the most famous example. State law there limits residential homes to collecting just 110 gallons of rainwater. That's 2 standard 55-gallon rain barrels. A single person needs about a gallon a day just to survive. So for a family of 4, that's less than a month's worth of drinking water, with nothing left for cleaning. This is the law behind the case where a man was cited for having 4 barrels instead of 2. Utah is also restrictive. You can store more, up to 2,500 gallons, but you have to register your system with the state. In Oregon, the law says you can collect water from your roof, but if it hits the ground first, it's considered state water, and you need a permit. All told, about 7 or 8 states have real restrictions a prepper needs to know about. These laws weren't really written to target preppers. They were designed to manage water for farms and cities. But like a lot of other rules, they're now being applied to homeowners who are just trying to be self-sufficient. So how do you legally secure your water supply? First, know your state's water laws. Is it a prior appropriation state, mostly in the West, or a riparian rights state, mostly in the East? Eastern states generally let landowners make reasonable use of water on their property, and you'll find very few restrictions on rainwater collection there. Most states have no restrictions at all. Second, if you're in a restrictive state, read the law very carefully. In Colorado, that 110-gallon limit is for residential properties, but agricultural properties often play by a different set of rules. You might be surprised to find that in some places, getting an agricultural designation for your land, which can sometimes be done on just a few acres with something as simple as beehives, can dramatically loosen the rules on water collection. Look for those loopholes. Third, just deal with the bureaucracy. If you're in a state like Utah that requires you to register your system, just do it. It might feel like an overreach, but registering makes your setup legally sound. It's an annoying but simple step to protect yourself. Fourth, focus on roof collection. In states like Oregon, the law is specific about collecting from artificial impervious surfaces, like a roof, which is usually okay. Make sure your system is designed to do just that. Fifth, build your water supply in other ways. While rainwater is great, don't make it your only plan. There are no laws against stockpiling water you buy. You can store it in food-grade barrels, totes, or just cases of bottled water. The average bathtub holds 50-70 gallons. A simple water bladder can turn that into an immediate emergency reserve. And of course, own high-quality water filters. A good filter can make tap water or even surface water safe to drink, and they are completely legal to own in any quantity. The headline, "Rainwater is illegal," is a half-truth. For most of the country, it's totally false. And for those in the few restrictive states, understanding the specific rules is how you win. Don't let the headline scare you. Let the fine print empower you. Quick pause for a second. If you're the kind of person who believes in being prepared instead of panicking at the last minute, hit subscribe. Because most people won't look into this stuff until it's too late. And by then, the rules have already changed. Few things get people as fired up as guns and ammo. While the big fights are usually about the firearms themselves, a quieter war is being fought over the ammunition that feeds them. Limiting how much ammo a person can own is a long-term goal for many, and the legal framework is being built, one state at a time. Let's be crystal clear. Right now, there is no state in the US that limits the quantity of ammunition you can buy at one time or keep in your home. The headlines you see about ammo limits are misleading. The restrictions are more bureaucratic. They're designed to make buying ammunition harder, more expensive, and easier to track. The biggest hurdles are in a handful of states. California and New York now require a background check for every single ammunition purchase. You can't just walk into a store and buy a box of 22s anymore. You have to show your ID, get a background check run through a state system, and pay a fee for the pleasure. In California, this law also shut down mail-order sales directly to your home. You now have to have it shipped to a licensed dealer and do the background check there. So much for the convenience and cost savings of buying online. 4 other states, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, make you get a special permit or license just to be allowed to buy ammunition. This is the real strategy. Not an outright ban on quantity, but a permission slip system to exercise a right. It creates a database of who is buying ammo, how much, and how often. For any prepper who values their privacy, that's a huge concern. On top of that, more states are passing mandatory safe storage laws. In states like Massachusetts and California, firearms must be locked up when they're not in your direct control. These laws are presented as being about safety, but they have real implications for your ability to get to a firearm quickly in an emergency. They also create another legal excuse for an inspection and another charge that can be thrown at a homeowner. Then you have bans on specific types of ammo and accessories. Armor-piercing ammo is mostly banned at the federal level. But states have gone further. New Jersey has restrictions on hollow point ammunition. Some states ban things like dragon's breath, shotgun shells. And after the Supreme Court weighed in on bump stocks, about 16 states, like California, still have their own state-level bans in place. Virginia recently passed a ban on magazines that hold more than 15 rounds. So what's the game plan for a law-abiding prepper? First, you absolutely have to know the laws in your state, your county, and your city. Do you need a background check for ammo? A special permit? Are online sales restricted? Ignorance is no excuse. Second, if you're in a restrictive state, the unfortunate truth is you have to jump through the hoops. Get the permit. Do the background check. It's the only way to legally build your supply. Third, think about investing in reloading equipment. For now, components like brass, bullets, primers, and powder are often less regulated than loaded ammunition. Learning to reload is a great skill that not only teaches you a ton, but also lets you build a supply without a background check for every single box. But you should know, this is on their radar too. Bills have been introduced in states like Pennsylvania to regulate components just like loaded ammo. That window of opportunity might be closing. Fourth, stick to common calibers. In a shortage, weird or exotic calibers will be the first to vanish. Sticking with popular rounds like 9mm, 5.56, and .223, Remington means better availability and a higher chance you can find more if you need it. Fifth, document your purchases. Just like with food, a record showing you bought your ammo gradually over time is your best defense against any accusation that you're hoarding it for some bad purpose. Keep your receipts. The legal landscape for ammunition is like a boa constrictor. It's not a sudden strike. It's a slow, gradual squeeze of regulations designed to restrict your access and track your activity. Staying prepared means being meticulously law-abiding and smart about how you get your supplies. This is the one that hits closest to home for a lot of people. Having a secure supply of essential medications is one of the toughest parts of being prepared long-term. If you rely on a prescription for a chronic condition, blood pressure, diabetes, anything, the thought of running out during a crisis is terrifying, and yet the entire system is set up to stop you from getting more than a 30 or 90-day supply. The myth here is that it's illegal to have more than a 90-day supply of your medication. That's not really true. The roadblocks aren't coming from the police. They're coming from insurance companies and pharmacies. Their policies are all about cost control, and they're the ones who create the 30-day wall that so many of us run into. The primary gatekeeper is your insurance plan. Most insurers will simply refuse to pay for a refill until you're just a few days away from running out. This puts you in a constant state of just-in-time inventory for your own health, which is incredibly risky when supply chains can break at any moment. In a crisis, pharmacies are often one of the first things to close. So how do you legally and methodically build a surplus of the meds you actually need? It takes some persistence, and you have to work the system. First, have an honest talk with your doctor. Explain that you want to be prepared for an emergency, whether it's a hurricane or just a personal travel issue. A lot of doctors are sympathetic to this, especially after the last few years. Ask if they'd be willing to write you a prescription for a 90-day supply that you can fill through a mail-order pharmacy. Those pharmacies are often more willing to fill a 90-day script than your local drugstore. Second, ask your doctor for a separate travel or emergency prescription. Some doctors will write an extra script just for this reason. You'll almost certainly have to pay for this out of pocket because your insurance won't cover it. But what's that cost compared to the peace of mind it buys you? This is a perfectly legitimate way to build up a small surplus. Third, look into something called Kevin's Law, which exists in some form in many states. It allows a pharmacist to dispense an emergency refill of certain chronic meds, not controlled substances, if they can't reach your doctor. It might only be a 3-day supply in some states, or up to a 30-day supply in others. But knowing this option exists is an important tool in your toolbox. Fourth, understand the rules are much stricter for controlled substances. Things like opioids, benzodiazepines, and certain stimulants are heavily regulated. Trying to build a surplus of these through legal channels is nearly impossible, and trying to do it illegally is just plain stupid and dangerous. Fifth, think about over-the-counter alternatives and natural remedies. While they can't replace a prescription, having a deep stock of pain relievers, anti-diarrhea meds, and antihistamines can be a lifesaver. And be aware that even some of these are tracked. For example, cold medicines with pseudoephedrine are often tracked and limited to prevent illegal drug manufacturing. Finally, storage and rotation are everything. Keep your meds in a cool, dark, dry place. Heat and humidity will ruin them. Keep a log of your inventory and expiration dates. Use the first in, first out method. Use your oldest supplies first and replace them with your new prescriptions. This keeps your emergency stash from expiring. Building a medical stockpile is a slow and steady game. It means working with your doctor, knowing the limits of your insurance, and sometimes paying out of pocket. It's not illegal to have your own legally prescribed medication, but the system makes it hard. Your persistence is how you beat it. And this is the part that causes the most confusion and the most fear. And now we get to the two legal ideas that cause the most fear and confusion in the prepper community: anti-hoarding laws and the Defense Production Act. These are the legal sledgehammers the government can pull out during a major crisis, and they're the source of that fear that someone could come and confiscate your food supply. Let's start with hoarding. The legal definition is very specific. Anti-hoarding laws are almost always tied to price gouging, and they only get activated when a state of emergency is declared. In states like Florida and California, it's illegal to sell essential goods at an unconscionable price during an emergency. An unconscionable price is often defined as anything way out of line with the average price for the 30 days before the emergency. California even puts a number on it. Selling essential items for more than 10% above the pre-emergency price is a misdemeanor. Now, here's the mistake most people make. They think these laws only apply to big stores like Walmart. That's wrong. In at least 22 states, these laws apply to any person. That means if you have a surplus of food and you sell a bag of rice to your neighbor at a jacked-up price during a crisis, you could be charged with price gouging. In Florida, the fines can be up to $1,000 per violation. This is the hoarding trap. The law isn't about what you have. It's about what you do with what you have. The simple act of selling your supplies during an emergency paints a target on your back. The safest legal play in a crisis is to think in terms of gifts or prearranged barter. If money doesn't change hands, there's no price to gouge. But what about straight-up confiscation? That's where the Defense Production Act, or DPA, comes in. This is a law from the Korean War era that gives the president the power to force companies to prioritize government contracts and to allocate materials needed for national defense. And yes, national defense has been expanded to include responding to domestic crises. Title 1 of the DPA gives the president the power to allocate materials, services, and facilities. This is the legal foundation the government could, in theory, use to requisition resources. The DPA also explicitly bans hoarding scarce and critical material and gives the government power over its distribution. So, could a federal agent with a DPA order show up at your door and demand your food? In a truly extreme nation-breaking catastrophe, the legal framework could be twisted to allow it. The Fifth Amendment says they have to give you just compensation for private property taken for public use, so they couldn't just steal it. But in a total collapse, what's that compensation really going to be worth? The much more likely scenario isn't door-to-door confiscation. It's using these laws to control supplies on a massive scale. The government could use the DPA to order food producers to sell only to FEMA. They could set up checkpoints to stop people from moving large amounts of food or fuel. They could use anti-hoarding laws to go after anyone running a black market. The legal defense against all of this is documentation. As we've said with food and ammo, a clear record that you built your supply slowly, over a long period, is your best legal shield. Keep receipts. Take time-stamped photos of your pantry. This paperwork proves you're a responsible planner, not a crisis profiteer who panic-bought everything yesterday. It draws a bright legal line between preparing and hoarding. The DPA and anti-hoarding laws aren't boogeymen that make your stockpile illegal today. They are powerful tools of control that can be switched on during an emergency. Understanding they are mostly triggered by selling things, and that your best defense is good records, is the key to making sure your preps stay legally yours, even when the world is going crazy. Now here's where your location changes everything. How much freedom you have as a prepper really depends on your zip code. Some states seem to have self-reliance baked into their DNA, while others have spun a thick web of regulations that can feel downright hostile to being prepared. Looking at laws across the board, fuel storage, water rights, food rules, firearm regulations, and emergency powers, a few states consistently stand out as being the toughest. Number 5, Massachusetts. This state has some of the strictest gun licensing laws in the country, and all firearms have to be locked up when not in your direct control. That said, it's pretty good on other things, like rainwater collection, which is legal and even encouraged. Number 4, Florida. This one might surprise people who think of it as a free state, but Florida can be aggressive with its anti-price gouging laws, which get activated for every hurricane, and can apply to individuals, not just businesses. Rural counties are often much more permissive, but the coastal cities can be tough. Number 3, Colorado. This state gets its high rank almost entirely because of its wild water laws. That 110-gallon cap on residential rainwater collection is the single most hostile regulation against preppers in the entire country. Number 2, New York. New York gives its governor huge emergency powers, including the ability to suspend laws by executive order. It also has tough gun and ammo laws, with background checks for ammo purchases. And if you live in New York City, local rules on everything from fuel storage to radio antennas make being an urban prepper a real legal headache. And the number 1 most restrictive state for preppers in the United States is California. It's at or near the top of the list in almost every category. It has strict gun and ammo laws, including background checks for ammo and mandatory storage laws. Some cities limit fuel storage to as little as 5 gallons. Its price gouging law is incredibly broad, with fines up to $10,000 for selling goods at more than a 10% markup in an emergency. And while the state ironically encourages rainwater collection, its building codes can make any kind of off-grid living almost impossible in many areas. The most important thing to remember is that even in these states, things can be totally different between the city and the countryside. A sheriff in a rural California county probably has a very different attitude about self-reliance than law enforcement in LA. You have to do your own research for your state, your county, and your town. The laws are public record. Your local library, fire marshal, and county clerk are your best friends. So after all that, what's the takeaway? We've looked at how fire codes limit your fuel, how water rights can stop you from collecting rain, and how an emergency declaration can legally relabel your food supply as hoarding. It can feel a little overwhelming. It might feel like the walls are closing in on our ability to just take care of ourselves. But that is not the message here. The message is this: knowledge is power. The very complexity of all these laws is what gives you the roadmap to navigate them. The same codes that restrict gasoline show you that diesel and propane are better options. The laws that limit rainwater in a few states don't even exist in most others. The hoarding trap is almost entirely about selling, not just owning. The government hasn't made stockpiling illegal. It has made ignorant stockpiling risky. They're counting on you not to read the fine print. They're counting on you to be scared by the headlines instead of educated by the actual rules. Your single greatest prep isn't another bucket of food. It's a binder filled with printouts of the municipal codes for your city, the fire code for your county, and the emergency power laws for your state. It's a binder with your receipts and your inventory. In a crisis, that binder is your shield. It's your proof that you are a prepared, law-abiding citizen, not a criminal. The truth is, dependency is what they want. They want you looking to them for help when the crisis they created or mismanaged finally hits. Every step you take toward being truly self-reliant is a step away from their control. Don't let them scare you. Get smart, get educated, and get prepared, legally and intelligently. This isn't about fear. It's about understanding the system you live in, because the people who stay prepared are the ones who understand the rules better than anyone else. If you found this helpful, give it a like and share it with someone else who needs to hear this. The more of us who understand the real rules, the safer we all will be. And now I want to hear from you. Down in the comments, let me know which of these laws surprised you the most. Was it the rainwater cap in Colorado? The fact that price gouging laws can apply to you personally? Let's share what we know and learn from each other. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay free.